This story is about how I used corporate policy as a shield when my boss crossed a line he absolutely shouldn't have. At first, I told myself it was probably nothing. You know how it is in the office, a comment here, a request there, something that just felt a little off, but was easy enough to brush aside. But these little things started adding up. I worked in a huge corporate environment. Professionalism was the language we spoke, and policies were everything. HR loved to remind us constantly that we were all expected to follow protocol, right down to the color of our binder clips. My boss, let's call him Richard, had been with the company for a long, long time. He was respected, confident, and very used to getting his way. And most of the time, that wasn't an issue, until it became one for me. It started small. He'd ask for things verbally instead of putting them in writing. He'd make comments that skirted the line of inappropriate, but were easy to dismiss if you pretended you didn't hear them right. He was blurring boundaries, and he'd laugh it off if anyone looked uncomfortable. It was never blatant. It was nothing you would immediately file a formal complaint over. Not yet. He operated in this gray area, relying on his seniority and the fact that most people felt obligated or too intimidated to push back. He was testing the waters, inching the line closer and closer to what he knew he could get away with. Then came the afternoon where he crossed that line completely. He pulled me aside, not to discuss a deadline or a client presentation, not to clarify a project milestone. He pulled me aside to make a request that had absolutely nothing to do with my job, and everything to do with his position of authority over me. He framed it casually, trying to make it sound like it was a minor inconvenience, or perhaps even an opportunity. But the implication was clear. I didn't have a choice. He expected compliance. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was intent. Now, most people would react emotionally. They might confront him, argue, or rush straight to HR in a fury. But I didn't. I kept my face perfectly neutral. I didn't say yes. I certainly didn't say no. I looked him straight in the eye and said the most professional, innocuous sentence I could think of. "Richard, could you please send that request to me in an email?" He laughed. He waved his hand dismissively. He said, "Oh, don't worry about the paperwork. It's nothing major. We can handle this offline." That told me everything I needed to know. If it was legitimate, he would have sent the email. The fact that he actively avoided putting it in writing meant he knew exactly what he was asking was wrong. From that moment on, I stopped playing his game. I decided to follow company policy exactly, not just the bare minimum, but every single letter, period, and comma of the protocol that HR was so proud of. Every single one of his requests went through email. Every meeting, even 5-minute check-ins, I took meticulous notes and followed up with a summary email titled, "Per our discussion, ... Every instruction, every casual comment that sounded like an assignment was confirmed in writing. Politely, professionally, immediately. If he stopped by my desk to ask for something, I listened, smiled, and then 30 seconds after he walked away, I sent him an email summarizing the conversation and asking for confirmation. I was turning his verbal commands into tangible evidence, and he did not like it one bit. He started pushing back almost immediately. He would corner me in the break room and say things like, "You being difficult. We used to be more flexible. Why are you making everything so rigid? Why are you documenting absolutely everything?" I just maintained my professional smile. I didn't argue. I would simply reply, "I just want to make sure I have all the details correct for the audit trail, Richie, following protocol." And I kept doing it. He tried to ignore the emails. He tried to bypass me. But because I was holding fast to protocol, his work started getting delayed or messy unless he engaged with the documentation I created. He had to decide if he wanted to do his job effectively or continue trying to force me into the gray area. Eventually, he pushed again. It was the same kind of request as before, just phrased slightly differently, the same crossed line. This time, I didn't need to ask for an email. I already had the paper trail built up. I replied to his vague request via email. And here's the key part. I didn't accuse him. I didn't criticize him. I simply quoted company policy word. I referenced the exact section numbers related to ethics and conduct. And then I ended the email by asking, given these clear guidelines, how would you like me to proceed with this request to ensure full compliance? He didn't respond to that email. Not at all. Silence. A week later, I got an email. But it wasn't from Richard, it was from HR. They requested a meeting with me immediately. The subject line was vague. Something like, discussion of recent departmental interactions. When I arrived, HR told me they had received a concern. They didn't say who raised it. They didn't need to. I knew exactly what was happening. HR asked me to explain my interactions with Richard over the last month. So, I did. Calmly. Chronologically. I didn't bring emotion into it. I didn't vent my frustration or make any sweeping, generalized accusations. I simply opened my laptop, projected my screen, and showed them the record. I showed them the emails where he made inappropriate requests. I showed them my polite, professional responses referencing policy. I showed them the detailed meeting notes I had compiled and confirmed in writing. I showed them the policy references I had researched that backed up my actions. I didn't speculate about his motives. I just showed them exactly what happened, and exactly how I responded based on the rulebook they created. The tone in the room changed immediately. HR stopped asking me questions and started frantically taking notes. They excused me from the meeting early, telling me they had plenty to review. That's when I knew this was no longer about me or my job performance. This was about their liability and the clear documentation I provided. Over the next few weeks, HR conducted a full review. They looked at communication patterns. They reviewed policy adherence mine and Richos. And they started looking into prior complaints. Apparently, mine wasn't the first time Richard had pushed boundaries. It was just the first time someone had provided a complete, undeniable documentation trail. Richard wasn't fired. This is corporate life, and usually they try to smooth things over. But he was severely penalized. He was officially removed from any direct oversight of my role. He was required to attend mandatory ethics and sensitivity training, and he was placed under formal review for the next 6 months. And most importantly for me, he stopped crossing lines. Work became quiet, professional, predictable, exactly how it was supposed to be all along. I didn't have to escalate emotionally. I didn't have to make loud accusations. I simply used the rules that the corporation was so proud of enforcing against the person who thought he was above them. Because when someone crosses a line in a professional environment, the safest, most effective response isn't retaliation. It's compliance by the book. If you are ever in a similar situation, remember T's documentation is your biggest asset. Always use email, always follow up, and make the policy your shield. Let me know in the comments if you've ever had to go by the book to handle a difficult situation at work. Thanks for watching, and be sure to hit that subscribe button for more workplace narratives.